Hi there and welcome to the TvTCF tutorial part 4 on how to create an Arma 3 multiplayer campaign very easily. Here's what we will do in this video. To create an interesting and immersive campaign, we need a good background story. Now it is also time to prepare ourselves for scripting in SQX, so I will say a few words about it. And then we enter the main part, which will be to create the campaign's first out of 2 missions, and we will finish it all up by playing the mission. So here's the interesting story. A helicopter has crashed in enemy territory northeast of Panachori. The area is well defended from all directions, but if it can be confirmed that there is no anti-air defense in Edessa, then a helicopter can sneak in from the south and rescue survivors. The story will have 2 episodes, Door Breach and Make It or Break It. Okay, we now save the story in the back of our heads and move on to the more technical part. We expand the mission folder and open the file intro. What you will see here is the intro mission, and maybe this looks a little unfamiliar. That's because this is SQX, not SQF. But don't panic. Quite soon you will discover that SQX mostly defines some frames, but the code content inside these frames will for the most part be quite ordinary and familiar SQF code. If you have worked with object-oriented design before, maybe in C++, Java, or Python, then you understand these structures already. If you have not, I will explain things briefly for the things we encounter, but not in detail. For the details, I recommend the Help menu. The most important here is the SQX reference page. All the SQX keywords are listed here with detailed documentation and examples. You can see on the size of the scroll bar here that it is not huge, and you should start right here. The class keyword is the most central part of it all. There's also a link to the SQX language forum page where you are welcome to ask SQX related questions. And this video here, creating a crowd class in SQX, will show you the basics in a more hands-on fashion. Now let's get on with the mission. First of all, we need to change the name from intro to door breach, like that. Then we need to define the sides, which side will attack and which side will defend. To make the sides interchangeable, TvTCF defines the acting and the opposing side instead of the east and the west side. And to be clear about which side is which in our mission, we specify that in the class comment here. Acting, the side attacking, and opposing, the side defending. By default, and until you get the hang of this, simply assume that west is the acting side and east is the opposing side. We now build the mission and head over to Arma. When we create missions in TvTCF, we specify areas, symbols, and unit positions entirely with the use of map markers. The only exceptions to this are the playable units. When we later add units to the mission, we will do that in code, but that's something we will look more into in the next video. In the door breach mission, we will need a few insertion areas. To make the mission more exciting and unpredictable for the opposing side, the defending side, remember, we add 2 possible insertion areas for the acting side, 1 on each side of the village. The first one we give the name M01A _ insertion 1. This name can be anything, but this is how I do it. M is for marker, 01 is the unique number of the mission, and A is for acting. Then an underscore followed by some kind of good name. During development, we put these markers very close, just so there will be short distances, making it easy for us to test things. The second marker will be on the other side of the village, and we name that M01A _ insertion 2. The opposing side will also insert in the area, but they insert directly into the village, since their mission is to defend it. We call this one M01O _ insertion. We also add a marker for the village center, and we call that one M01A _ village center. A, since it's a marker relevant for the acting side. Okay, let's run this. We can see the new name door breach, appear. And if we open the map, we notice that we cannot see our markers. But there's a reason for that. We don't want all markers to be visible to everyone all the time. So the only ones visible on each side will be the ones that we specify in our mission class. So let's do that. Directly beneath the line with the mission name, we add mission.insertionAreasActing equals empty brackets. In object-oriented design, a class member is separated from the class with a dot. When we write the dot, you can see that the IntelliSense is showing us all the methods and properties that belong to the mission settings object. We can read this like the property named insertionAreasActing belonging to the mission variable is of type mission settings. And further, this property is an area of marker names. You can read more about the class keyword on the SQX reference page. In this area, we add the acting side's insertion area markers that will be visible for the acting side. M01A_insertion1 and M01A_insertion2. And we do the same for the opposing side's insertion area marker. The marker name is M01O_insertion. The village center marker is another kind of marker. It is not an insertion marker, but more of an ordinary marker. We will call that one a side marker, since it will be visible for one side only, the acting side. So on the next line, we write mission.visibleMarkersActing equals M01A_village center. We will now test this in Arma, but this is very important. For every change we do in an SQX file, we will need to build its SQF file again to be able to see the effect of our changes. This time we know that this file is the only one that has been changed since the last build, so we can select Build and Build File. From now on, I will use this shortcut, Ctrl B, for that operation. Playing as West, or the acting side, we expect to see the two insertion markers. We open the Action menu and select Perform Insertion. The map opens and we are asked to select the position in one of the insertion areas. Notice that we only see the insertion areas that are relevant for our side. And since we are playing the acting side, we can also see the village center marker. And if we click somewhere here, we get there. Okay, if we now start this in multiplayer instead, so that we can select Op for or the opposing side, we will see what it looks like. Here we see the opposing side's insertion area instead, and we can go there. Now we have completed the map marker part, so we go to the Type SQF editor again to enter some briefing. Let's check the documentation. Our intro mission class inherits the mission class. This base class has its place in the campaign's shared folder. We open it and press Ctrl F and search for something like add briefing. And here we find something interesting. This method is used to add the briefing information for the acting side. In the comments, we can read everything we need to know about it. We can see that its default behavior is to get the text from the primary objective. But that's not what we want. That would feel stiff and non-immersive. So what we want to do is to define our own behavior for this method. That is, we want to override it. This can be done since this method is marked as virtual. And if you don't know what I mean, see the SQX reference page and read about the keywords virtual and override. To override this method in our intro class, we go back and add a method with the same name. So we create some space here, and then we write protected override. And when we press space, the IntelliSense shows us all the methods in the base class, the mission class, that are possible for us to override. So we write add brief and press tab to complete the method header with the selected option. We add the curly brackets, and inside the method we write return. The return keyword is also an SQX thing, and it simply means that we break the execution and deliver a method result. You can read about it in the SQX reference page. Let's also add the briefing for the opposing side in the same way. We build the file and start the mission again. Open the map, and now we have a briefing. However, the objective still says survive, which is not correct. Let's fix that. We will now override another method. We write protected override and then add primary objective acting. In the method header, we can see that this method returns an object of type mission objective. We can highlight the class name and press F12 to get to the definition. And here we can see that its constructor takes two arguments, a short description and a full description. And the second one is optional. So back in our intro class, we write return bracket bracket new mission objective. And the parameters will be first the short description and then the full description. We also add the same method for the opposing side. We copy the line from the previous method and change the parameters to. If this seems unclear, please see the keywords new and constructor in the SQX reference. We build the mission file again, and now both the briefing and the objectives should be complete. Yes, here we can now see what we are supposed to do in the mission. But we are not really done yet. Let's move to the village center and see what happens. Nothing happens. This is where we want to see the objective succeeded message appear. And that is the last thing we will do to complete this mission. This time, we need to override a method called check primary objective state acting. This method returns an enum, objective state, that can have the values succeeded, failed, cancelled, or none. You can read about the enum on the SQX reference page. This method is called like once every second during the mission until it returns anything other than none. Then it will not be called again. So we start with return objective state.none. If we leave it here, this would never fulfill the objective during the mission, and when the mission ends, this objective status will be set to failed. So we need to specify the success condition above this line. If you wonder about the var keyword, it is almost exactly like the SQF's private. Information about the var keyword is also available on the SQX reference page. Now, this method will return success when at least one unit is less than 25 meters from the village center. And we will also add the same method for the opposing side. And what is the success condition of the opposing side? Well, the opposing side will succeed if the acting never gets close to the village center. Or you could say they succeed when acting fails. So let's express that using the primary objective state acting property on the mission class. But wait a minute, when will this condition actually be true? If we look at acting's method, we can see that it never returns failed. So let's try to find a fail condition for this one. What if all acting units are killed before they get near the village center? Then they will fail. This can be done with the help of the count units alive acting method on the mission class. It is important to think through and handle these edge cases. We do that by, for each of these methods, ask ourselves questions like, what happens if all allied units are killed? What happens if all enemy units are killed? And what happens if the mission suddenly ends? And do both of these methods specify success and fail conditions? And are both important? Well, when we now do this, we notice that the opposing side's check method never returns failed. Is that a problem in this mission? Yes, it is, because if the acting side fulfills its objective, then this method will never return anything other than none. In one sense, that will still be correct, because at the end of the mission, the opposing side's primary objective state will be set to failed. However, the mission will not end until it runs out of time, after maybe 25 minutes of long, boring waiting time on both sides. But when does it fail then? And the answer is when an acting unit gets near the village center. The logic is almost identical to this logic here, so we can copy this and we change this return value from succeeded to failed. A mission ends when all the objectives on both sides have a state, or when all players on both sides are dead. Now we're actually done. We can now play the whole mission from start to end, and we can start a multiplayer server, invite some friends, and play it against each other. And look at this code. In just 20 or 30 lines, we have created a fully playable mission, one lost build, and everything should work. Okay, that's all for now. In the next video, we will create the second mission of this tutorial campaign, and since we now know the basics, I will demonstrate some more interesting and useful features of the TvTCF framework.